Well, good evening. If anyone is present, we may start. So, if anyone is watching this stream, please leave a message in the chat. I can see few concurrent viewers, but I'm not getting any response. Are you able to hear me? If you are there, please confirm in the chat. Can someone please confirm if I'm audible or not at least? If I'm audible, please respond in the chat. Someone please confirm if the stream is okay or am I audible? Otherwise, I have to call off this idea. If I'm audible and you can hear me, please leave a message on the stream, on the chat that is. Please leave a message in the chat or else I have to close the stream because I'm not getting any response. Okay, so I'm audible. Someone has confirmed. Okay. So at least the technical issue is sorted out. So let's begin. So this stream is about introduction. Okay, and it's visible also. Thank you, Pranit. So let's begin. So this class is about introduction to object-oriented programming using Java, and the theory part is mostly clear to the students. So what I'll be emphasizing on is the application aspect. So like as you can see from the syllabus, it says that topics 5 to 12 should be introduced almost simultaneously. Now, if you see the topics 5 to 12, that means everything from primitive values to statement, scope, method, constructor. They are saying that it can be introduced simultaneously. The idea is, so the idea over here is that, okay, wait a minute, there's some disturbance. Okay, now it's okay. Okay, so I'm back. So the idea over here is that what is object-oriented programming? Now, before object-oriented programming, there was something known as procedure-oriented programming, in which the whole emphasis was on taking the input, doing the processing one by one, and displaying the output. Now, there was no problem as such with the approach, because the programs were working, but the problem started occurring when the performance of the computers began to increase, the size of the program starts increasing, and then the number of people involved in writing a program were more. So as the program grew in size, when the program tends to be larger and larger, this procedure-oriented programming was not sufficient to code. So what they do is, they decided that the program should be written in such a way that it is closer to the problem space rather than being close to the system. Like if you see a procedure-oriented programming, it is more closer to the computer rather than the problem it is solving, and hence it is difficult to maintain. So the whole thing is that object-oriented programming makes more sense when the programs are large. The operating keyword over here is large. So in order to maintain large programs, object-oriented programming is required. And the idea over here is that the data is more important than anything else. So data is stored in objects, and the operations on that object are known as its behavior. So let's move this syllabus out of the way. And right now you have a blank BlueJ project in front of you. So someone is saying on the stream that, okay, no problem. If you didn't receive a notification, it's okay. So let's begin. So first what I'll do is I'll write a very simple program using the procedure-oriented logic. So for that, what I'll do, I'll just say new class, and let's say I create a very generic class and I'll call it circle. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to write a program which prompts the user to enter the radius of a circle, and then we'll calculate, let's say, area and circumference of the same. So what I'll do is I'll create a very simple class, and inside that class I have a very skeleton is there. So what I'll do is I'll first create a variable, let's say radius. Then I'll prompt the user to enter the radius. I'll say enter radius. And once that is done, I'll get an input from the user. I'll say float. I've already declared the variable, so I'll say radius is equal to in dot next float, and then I'll quickly calculate the two things which I'm interested in. First is area, and area is equal to pi r square. So float math.pi. This will substitute a fairly accurate value of pi over here, and that will be followed by radius into radius. And then we'll say float circumference is equal to, the formula is 2 pi r. So 2 into, again, float math.pi. And then we'll say into radius. I missed an f over here, so I'll go and add a f. And thereafter, we'll just display the answer. We'll say system.out.println area, and then we'll display the value of the area. And that will be followed by another println, where we'll say that circumference is whatever is stored in the variable circumference. So once this is done, now as you can see, the program is going to work if I run this. Let's run this for the sake of completeness. So I'll run this program. I'll say main, and within the main, I'll enter the radius as 1. And as you can see, it is displaying the area and the circumference. So the program is working, and the programs will work. The thing is that in this method of programming, it's a very linear in nature. We declare the variable, we enter the values, we calculate whatever is required, and then we print it. But if this program is large, then it will be difficult to maintain because there is no security of data. Either it is available to everyone or it's not available to anyone at all. So here the concept of object-oriented programming comes in. The idea is that the data, that is in this case, radius, and the associated operations. Now we are doing two things over here. We are finding the area and we are finding the circumference. So for a large program, if we want to do something else in the program, if we want to modify it, if we want to do something else, then we have to make changes at a lot of places, due to which errors might creep in. So in object-oriented programming, what we do, we try to model this like it happens in the real world. So in the real world, if you have something, there are two things involved. There are certain properties and there are certain behaviors. In our case, the property or the data is the radius, and the behavior is that we want to get the area and we want to get the circumference. So now we'll convert this into an object-oriented program, and for that what I'll do is, first I'll remove everything else. So let's say I remove everything else and I say there is a class by the name of circle. So now we have a class called circle, and a class encapsulates the data and the behavior. So data in this case is again the radius, and the behaviors, there are two behaviors. We want to calculate the area, so we'll say public float, and we'll call it get area, which will return us the area later on. And we'll have one more method which we'll call as get circumference, which is supposed to calculate the circumference. Now this variable which we have declared over here, I'll put a comment over here. This is something known as an instance variable. The idea behind the instance variable is that if I create multiple objects, each object will have one copy of the instance. Like for example, if I run this program right now, if I compile it, oops, right now it won't compile because it's not complete. So what I'll do, I'll simply say return, and the formula for area is pi r square. So float math.pi into radius. And similarly, we have to calculate the circumference also. So we'll go over here and we'll say 2 into pi into r. So now the program will compile, and once the program compiles, what we'll do is I'll close this, and if I say new circle, and let's say the name of the object is circle1. So you can see on the workbench there's a object by the name of circle1. If I create another object, let's call it circle2, there are two objects, and if we inspect it, like for example, if I go inside, this circle1 has one copy of radius, and if I right click over here and I say again inspect, circle2 has another copy of radius. So this is the meaning of an instance variable. An instance variable means that whenever the memory is allocated for an object, each object or each copy will have its own radius. Now, as you can see right now, the default value is 0.0f because we haven't assigned anything. So for this kind of a thing, we need one more function to assign values. Let's call it public void set radius. And inside the set radius, I'll say float, let's say r. And then we'll say that, okay, radius is equal to r. So now what happens is I again compile the program. I create an object. We'll again call it circle1. And if I inspect it right now, you can see radius is 0.0. But if I go over here and call the method, that is set radius, computer is prompting me to enter the value of r. So if I enter 2, the value of r will be 2, and this 2 will be stored in the variable radius. And now if I inspect it again, you can see the value 2 is stored inside. Now if I create another object, notice what happens. Let's call it circle2. This object, if I inspect, you'll see that the value is still 0 because the method set radius was called on circle1 and not circle2. So let's say if I call that method on circle2, and let's say this time the value is 23. So we'll notice that now this is storing 23 and the other object is storing 2. So this is how the methods operate. And let's say if I want to calculate the area of this one, I say get area, the value returned is 12.5, the radius was 2. If I click on this area, the value returned will be more because the radius is more. So again, let me open this. So we have an instance variable, and then we are having 3 methods in this case. The first 2 methods are operating on the variable radius and giving us some sort of answer. And the third variable is modifying the value of the instance variable. So now there's some terminology involved which you might want to know. So a function which modifies the value of the instance variable is sometimes known as an impure function, sometimes also known as a mutator method, because it is mutating or changing the value of the radius. So this method is an impure method. The idea is that it is introducing impurity in the instance variable. We are changing it, hence impure. And sometimes this is also known as mutator method because it is mutating the value of the instance variable. So this is one point. Now here, because we are using BlueJ, we are creating objects by simply right clicking and saying new circle. If you are not using BlueJ, that is if you are writing a program in a real world scenario, your objects will be created usually through the main. So let me create one more class and I'll just call it test circle because that is the intention. So I'll say test circle and I'll say generic class. And if I go inside, I'll remove all this. And now whatever I was doing through BlueJ, I'll do through the program. That is, instead of right clicking and creating object, I want to create an object through a program. So here what we can do is, the syntax is, we first give the name of the class, that is circle. That is followed by the name of the objects, let's say again circle1. So I'm trying to mimic what we were doing by pointing and clicking inside a program, and then we'll say new circle. So technically what is happening is we are creating a reference variable circle, then we are allocating memory for the object circle, and this circle variable is referring to the circle object. Let me explain this with the help of a diagram so that it's clear. So what is happening over here is that a reference variable is being created, then an object is being created. Within that object, there is only one property, that is radius. Let me label it. So this is our circle 1. It is pointing to an object, and that object inside contains the instance variable radius. And like now, if you see, this is a reference variable. It is referring to this object. That's the whole idea. So it's very much possible that I may create another object and call it something else. So the fastest way is I'll just copy paste, reposition it over here, and let me just rename this to circle 2. So now there are two objects, each have its own copy of radius, that is the instance variable is there inside the object. And why we call it a reference variable? Because it refers to a memory location. Please understand, in primitive variables the data is stored within the variable, whereas in case of a reference data type or objects, the object is somewhere else in the memory and the reference variable points to it. Okay, now let me move this diagram out of the way. And then what we'll do is I'll show you something else. So the object is created. Now I'm going to do something unusual. I'll say system.out.println, and I'm trying to print circle 1. Please note, I'm not calling any display method or something. I'm directly saying system.out.println circle 1, and see what happens. If I compile this and I run it, it says circle at, and then that is followed by a hash code, that is somewhere in the memory the object is created, and the computer is trying to tell us that what we are trying to print cannot be printed because it's a reference variable. It is referring to an object of type circle. So let me further elaborate this. Let me create one more object. So what I'll do is I'll copy this line where we were creating the object. I'll paste it again, and this time we'll call it circle 2. And then again I'll copy this print line. I'll make a copy of it and I'll call it circle 2. And now if I run it again, see what happens. So I'll again compile this program. We'll close it. And if I run it again, now you notice there is one circle at this address, that is 7868E67A, and there is another circle at this other hash code, that is FA64640EA. So the point over here is that when I ran the program for the first time, the memory allocated was somewhere else. When I'm running it again, the memory is at somewhere else. So this is one thing which tells us that these are two separate circle objects. One more thing which I would like to elaborate at this point of time is that if I open it again and I create a third reference variable, please note I'm not creating an object, I'm just saying circle 3. So circle 3 is a reference variable which is not pointing to anywhere. And if I say circle 3 is equal to circle 1, and again I try to print this circle 3, see what happens. I say circle 3 and I run it again. Notice that the first one and the last one is same. So basically there are only two objects, one for circle 1, one for circle 2, and circle 3 is simply pointing to the first object. Now that is one thing. Now obviously when we are trying to print a circle, this thing is not looking very nice. Though it is telling us what it is, it's not serving any purpose as such. And here we come to another interesting point. That is, if I say public string toString. I'm creating a method toString, which is actually returning a string. And let's say if inside this, I'll say return circle, and I say with radius, and then I display a radius. I'll say plus radius. So now what will happen is that whenever anyone will try just give me a moment. So now what will happen is that whenever we'll try to print a circle object, or for that matter, any object, if you try to print it directly, println wants a string. Here, this is not a string. So what will happen is computer will try to convert it to a string. And in order to convert it to a string, it will look for a function by the name of toString within the method. Now, in this case, we have made a toString method inside the circle class. So this will be called automatically. So now, right now, what is happening is that both the circles, the radius is 0. So very quickly, I'll say, now there is a method. So we'll say circle dot set radius, and I'm setting the value to 10. Then again, I'll say circle 2 dot set radius, circle 1 dot set radius, and then I'll say circle 2 dot set radius, and here I'll say 20. So now there are two circles. The first one is having the value 10, the second one is having the value 20, and now when we'll try to print it, instead of printing the hash codes, we'll get a rather interesting output. So if I say main, see what happens. Now it is saying circle with radius 10, circle with radius 20, and then there is a circle with just 10, which is actually the same as the first one. So let me open it once again. So what we have discussed right now is that this is our instance variable. Then there is a method. There are there are 4 methods, and the last one is the toString, which can convert an object to its string representation. Now, one more thing which I would like to emphasize is that we are having encapsulation over here. That's not an issue. But we are not abstracting it properly. What I mean by not abstracting it properly is that if someone from here, instead of calling this set radius method, let's say someone says circle 1 dot radius is equal to -5. Now this is an absurd thing to do. You cannot have a circle with radius -5, but here we are having it as -5. So now if I compile and run this program, see what happens. As you can see, the circle is having the negative value. So the whole idea about abstraction is that we want to reveal only the essential part and hide the important things, or control access. Now here the access is not controlled. So what we can do to control it is that before storing the value, we can check. That is, over here, we might say if r is more than 0, only then we'll say that radius is equal to r. Otherwise, we'll ignore it. Now here the problem is that someone can directly access this variable. So what we can do over here is we'll say private float radius. And now if I run the program, you'll see an error. So if I compile it over here, see, it is saying circle 1 dot set radius is equal to -5 is not allowed. So this is the proper way of doing things. That is, the data should be kept private and the methods should ideally be kept public. So we are providing abstraction in this way. The data cannot be accessed directly and shouldn't be accessed directly, even though students find it convenient to make everything public, but this is the correct way of doing it. So now you can only place reasonable values. So like, for example, if I try to place -20, that will be ignored. So let me compile this once more. And if I run it now, see what happens. The first circle is having the radius 10, and the second assignment, or rather the intended assignment, has failed, computer is not storing -20 because that's not a genuine value for a radius. So that is why we should strive to make data private as far as possible, and methods should be public. Later on, when we'll do inheritance, we might try to make it protected also. But right now, at this point of time, our methods will be public and our data members will be private. Now, I think we have discussed the important points mentioned in the syllabus. Let me bring this over here again. So we know what is an attribute. We know what is a behavior. We have talked about an object as an instance of a class. And we have written one program which is utilizing all the things mentioned in the first part of the syllabus. So if anyone has any questions regarding this, you may ask now. Any doubts, anything which you want me to clarify, you can ask now. The program is there in front of you. I'll make it slightly smaller so that it fits on the screen. So I believe the only new thing which you might have got over here is probably the public toString thing. Is it clear to everyone? Someone is saying, okay, the entire course. That is the idea actually. But the thing is that making videos is slightly boring in nature. So if it's like this, for example, in the case of a live stream, it's slightly better. Okay, now someone is asking, will it be accepted in boards or 11th exam? It means what? Please clarify what you're talking about. Aman, you are saying, will it be accepted in boards or 11th exam? What you're talking about, what is not accepted? toString? You can make a toString method, that's not a problem. That's something very well known. Aman, have I answered your class question? Is that what you are asking? And one more thing. I'm starting from the class 11 portion, because if you see the syllabus of class 12, you will find that most of the things are same. So I'll begin with class 11 and then ultimately we'll reach the class 12 part as well. Okay, so K-map. There is already a question, there's already a video on K-map on my channel. If you search for it by the name of K-map on my channel, you'll find it. I've made a detailed video on K-map. Any other doubts? If you can think of any. So I'm going to share the URL of the K-map thing. The K-map video can be accessed at. I've shared the link. You can follow that link. The thumbnail looks something like this. This is the video which I'm talking about. This discusses the K-map in detail. Okay, so Aman is saying, I was talking about object-oriented way. Now, Aman, if you open any old question paper, any previous year question paper of class 12, you'll find that all the questions are through object-oriented programming. They never usually ask a question which doesn't ask you to make this class and this method. So that's always done. It's not about being accepted. It's they don't ask a question without an object. In board examination, they'll always be asking, create this class, these are the data members, these are the methods. That's always done. So like say, for example, I'll just open one old question paper for you. So if I go over here and I show you the question itself, see, in all the questions, they clearly say class name this, data members this, member functions this, and this happens in all the questions. So it's not the matter of choice. You have to write a program using object-oriented programming in the board examination. And usually whatever happens in the board examination happens in class 11th also. If you are very lucky, you might get a question or two where the teacher doesn't ask you for the method, but usually that's not going to happen. Yes, any other doubts other than this? Okay, it seems that there are no doubts in this portion. Obviously, this was quite a simple portion. So that's all for today. The next live stream will be day after tomorrow, in which we'll go to the next two topics of the syllabus. When I say next two topics, I'm referring to the part C, that is the details of JVM and all. And then this is a very important part, we'll be talking about compile time, runtime errors, and we'll also discuss exceptions in detail. Now, this is something which will be new for you. This is not something which was there in class 9th and 10th. So make sure that if you're interested in exceptions, be present for the next live session. Okay, some more question has come up. So Aman is asking, how about practicals? How are they conducted? So Aman, practical or paper 2 will be of 3 hours, which is divided into 2 portions, 90 minutes each. The first part is the planning session, where you will be required to write everything in the answer script. And the second part will be the practical session, where you will not be allowed to make any changes to what you have written in your answer script. And then you will be running your program. If there are major changes in what you wrote and what you actually ran on the system, there is some penalty. Otherwise, you will proceed. If the program runs properly, you'll get your marks. So there will be a practical paper where there will be 3 questions. You have to do 1 questions out of those 3. The division of questions is usually on a very predictable pattern. 1 question is on some sort of numbers. 1 question is on double dimension array, and the 3rd question is usually on strings. And I have made a detailed video on practical also. If you search on my channel, you'll find it. Okay, now there's one more question. Sir, from 25, there is my computer exam ISC class 12, and the portion is Boolean algebra, K-map and logic gates and address and some simple programming. Okay, so K-map problem is solved. Logic gate and what's the other thing written? Logic gates and address and some simple programming. I think we'll be like the initial portions I'll be covering quite fast. So your simple programs can also be handled before 25th, but 25th is not very far away. Today is 20th. So what you can do is you can go through, like there are lots of programs on my channel. There are some playlists, like playlist of string, playlist of double dimension arrays. You can go through them for getting an idea. There is a playlist on arrays, there is a playlist on strings, and there is a playlist on double dimension array as well. So if you go through them, that will be taken care of. Any other doubts? Okay, so you are probably having, are you having some issues in adders and like encoders, decoder, etc.? If you have an issue, let's say, what's on Sunday? Let me check. 22nd. We can have a separate session for this adders, full adder, half adder, encoder, decoders on Sunday if you wish, if that is okay with you. Aman, I already have a lot of programs on, sorry. I already have a lot of videos on my channel where I'm solving the programs in one by one. If you have any particular program in mind which you want me to solve, then you can send it to me. I'll see to it on the Telegram channel. Okay, so it seems that there are two things which are to be taken care of. Aman wants some class 11 programs that will be anyway doing once we cover the next few topics, so that will be taken care of. And the other request is that you want that Boolean algebra part. Okay, so we'll have a separate class on Boolean algebra on Sunday. In one class, we'll cover half adder, full adders, encoders, and decoders. Let's say multiplexer also. Is that okay? Yes, general questions are also okay. I'll suggest that whatever questions you have in mind, you share it on the Telegram channel so that I can plan the class accordingly. Is that okay? No, there are no, like, okay, there's one more question. Sir, is there any video of classes and objects? Not specifically. There are many programs in which classes and objects are being used. Like if you see in all the practical programs, I do use classes and objects as far as possible. So yes, you will find programs on object and classes, but not specifically on objects and classes explaining the thing. That will be done in the next 2-3 classes. We'll be making some fairly big programs to make all the things clear. Okay then. So right now I am closing this stream now. Day after tomorrow we'll meet again. We'll talk about the JVM and the compile time and runtime errors and exceptions. The main topic that we'll be covering in the next class will be exceptions. So that's all for the day. One last chance. If you want to ask anything else, you may clarify it right now. Okay, it seems that no one has any issue. Okay, there is something else. Sir, where is the link of Telegram so we can set time of live stream? Okay, just hold on for a moment. I'm giving you the link. I believe the Telegram link is in the description also, but I'll post it in the chat also. This is the Telegram link. Yes, anything else? Any other question which is coming in your mind? And one more thing, live stream, the timing for the live stream, I'll prefer either early morning or the time which we are having now. Let's say, even if you start from 7, I'm okay with it. Okay, as far as the notification thing is concerned, the timing will remain fixed. Like tomorrow I'm not free, but otherwise, let's say Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday, 8 o'clock will be the time. I did notified about the time in the community section of the YouTube channel. So please help me for Boolean algebra. Okay, no problem. So we are having a class for Boolean algebra on Sunday. So we'll see to all your problems on Sunday. And before that, I'll suggest that you watch that K-map video. So that shouldn't be an issue. Okay, then that's all for the day then. Thank you for joining in.